Welcome back to Historical Context. Today we start a new series on the Virginia colony during the Restoration. This series will take us through 25 years of Virginia history, ranging from the year 1660 up to 1685. We're at a point in our podcast where there is a lot of research out there and a lot of resources, so instead of us hopping from colony to colony each week, we're now going to take the series and place it in a specific colony and then move to the next area within the same time frame. So I think we're going to be in store for somewhere between 6 and 10 episodes here in Virginia, so I hope you enjoy it. We last left off in late 1659 in Virginia, where there was a letter that had come in from England casting doubt as to the future of the Commonwealth without a leader. During this drama, Governor Samuel Matthews dies, and that leaves the Virginia colony without a leader. So one whale of a time to have the home country without a leader, and now you lose your governor, and so now you've got to figure out what's going on. And with no direction coming from an uncertain England, the House of Burgesses met in March of 1660 to elect a new governor. Let's have a look. Ordered that the declaration already drawn up and read in the House, demonstrating the reasons and grounds of the assemblies assuming the power of the government, be forthwith proclaimed and published, and the declaration recorded. Whereas the Honorable Sir William Berkeley desired the advice of the late council and their concurrence in his acceptance of the government, that the declaration of Sir William Berkeley to be Governor and Captain General of Virginia. Sir William Berkeley is back in control. He is back as the governor of Virginia. And it appears as if at this time the Burgesses were mostly comprised of royalist leanings, and that they had been able to empower their position after the disputes with former Governor Matthews and the hands-off approach of the Commonwealth even when it was under the control of the Cromwells. The colony had not heard of the events in England yet, so they weren't aware of the fact that England, too, was swinging royalist. So to naturally drift in that direction is rather interesting and probably helps the Virginia colony long term. Berkeley was instructed by the Burgesses to select a member of their Council of State, the only restriction being that it could not be an existing Burgess. So they had their own Council of State formed. It was a governor's council. I think that terminology had changed over the years. And Berkeley's selection of Secretary of State is what would really raise some eyebrows. He selects William Claiborne. Now, William Claiborne was a commissioner acting on behalf of the Commonwealth. So this is certainly a bizarre situation, given that Claiborne was a huge part of Berkeley giving up control 8 years earlier. The House also passed a bill making it illegal for Burgesses to use their title to exempt them from arrest. In May 1660, Charles II officially becomes the King of England, restoring the monarch to the mother country. So England, no longer a commonwealth, now back to being a monarchy. On June 17, 1660, Charles II sent a warrant to Virginia naming Sir William Berkeley the royal governor of the colony. So Charles II and the House of Burgesses on the same page with William Berkeley, and that's certainly a good sign for the colony. In the fall of that year, the English Parliament would pass an act for the encouraging and increasing of shipping and navigation. This was also known as the Navigation Act of 1660, and this is a pivotal point for the American colonies. While your history class may talk about the Stamp Act and the Intolerable Acts of a century later as influences of the American Revolution, seeds of these events can be tied back to the Navigation Act of 1660. The act called on trade to be conducted in the English Empire only with English-made ships. Additionally, 75% or more of the crew of these ships were required to be English. While a subsequent law defined foreign plantations as English, the law had some negative impacts. The acts restricted certain exports from the colonies to England only. Tobacco was previously the only good, but now England added sugar, cotton wool, indigo, ginger, and dyeing woods. Because of the shipping restriction, who could be on the boat and what the boat could be made of, the cost of transportation increased. This, combined with the lower price of the products due to a limited market, again, if you can only operate in the English market, you can't trade with Dutch, natives, Spanish, you can't trade with anybody else. Got to be the English. Lower demand, lower price, and this limited market hurt the colonists. And so now we see why William Washburn called 1659 the height of legislative autonomy in Virginia, because this is a huge step back for them when it comes to trade. In England, the Council of Foreign Plantations was established to help manage the affairs of the English colonies. And this is something that's going to stick around, but it'll change names throughout the years. But now we have a Council of Foreign Plantations established. The council was responsible for the taking of a census, assessing the strength of forts and the militia, and develop in accordance with judges the method of government to be administered. The council was also charged with enforcing the newly created Navigation Acts. In a letter to Governor Berkeley introducing the Council on Foreign Plantations, Berkeley was also asked to, quote, lay aside animosities begotten by the late distracted and unsettled times, and unite affectionately so that former differences may be buried into oblivion. So Berkeley is being asked to be a little more forgiving. A week later, the Committee on Foreign Plantations met and sent a request to Virginia to encourage the colony to increase its production of flax, silk, and white mulberry trees. Where is former Governor Edward Digges when you need him? The Virginia Assembly met in March 1661 and passed a new law regarding land purchases from natives. Land sales weren't prohibited per se, but the native tribes' majority consent was required. The Assembly also dealt with runaway servants. Local authorities who were on the hook financially for the decisions of whether or not to pursue runaway servants now had the authority to decide not to go after them. It's hard to tell based on the terminology of the time, but I do believe this policy dealt only with indentured servants and not African slaves. The Assembly also passed a resolution requesting resources be gathered for the founding of a college of liberal arts and sciences. They also ordered the construction of a state house. William Claiborne was then replaced as Secretary of State by Thomas Ludwell. This was upon the order of Charles II. This effectively ends Claiborne's career in public office. The Assembly also allowed a nearby native group to not only keep their lands, but the guns they had acquired, citing that they had been kind and sensible. In the summer of 1661, the Council of Foreign Plantations ordered the payment of £2,000 directly to Sir William Berkeley for his service to the crown. In March of 1662, the Assembly ordered Giles Brent to pay £15,000 tobacco for the false warrants and imprisonment of the Potomac natives. So Giles Brent having to pay back for imprisonment of natives. The Assembly focused heavily on relationships with the area natives. In one case, a native had been taken into slavery, and the Assembly weighed in, releasing that native. A commission was also formed to investigate the various claims to native lands. The Assembly also voted to seize £40 from the estates of various persons related to the government of Boston due to the damages. The extent of those damages was not disclosed. In May 1662, the planters and merchants of Virginia sent a petition to the king to request that the planting of tobacco be limited to before June 1st, and that by doing so it would create a larger supply of silk, flax, hemp, pitch, and potash. Again, this is an issue we've discussed throughout the podcast with Virginia, limiting the supply of tobacco, increasing the agriculture in these other areas. Well, now, if you put a set date on planting, maybe you'll be able to do more with these other areas of supply. This was also likely in response to the decline in tobacco prices, which are directly tied to the Navigation Acts of 1660. Governor Berkeley's council requested that the petition be rejected. On June 13th, another request was sent on behalf of the merchants, ship owners, and planters, asking Charles II to reconsider. At the same time, Sir William Berkeley wrote to London, providing insight for improving the colony. One thing he brings up is better pricing for cattle. Berkeley goes on to mention that many men of good stature had left the colony and taken their estates with them. By keeping people in Virginia for multiple generations, it would make the colony more industrious. Berkeley also wrote against tobacco and said that planters had not been encouraged to grow other industries such as shipping. And note, at this time, Virginia being more agriculture and Massachusetts being more industrial as it has started to get into shipbuilding. Berkeley points out that a side effect from the Navigation Acts is that it benefits the merchants at the expense of the planters. Berkeley also adds that the infrastructure of the colony was built by unskilled planters who did everything they could to create what they had, but it was now falling apart. He suggests an increase of 1 penny to the tobacco custom to go into England and be used to finance skilled men coming to Virginia to develop infrastructure and industry. Berkeley also insinuates in his writing that 1/4 of English customs collected come from America. And he adds that 200,000 English are located in various colonies, and that number could double in 20 years. And I don't know where he got that number, but I thought it was worth mentioning. It is now believed by the early 1660s that there are 200,000 English in colonies around the world. The Council of Foreign Plantations takes up Sir William Berkeley's letter and holds meetings in June, July, and August. In the August 11th committee meeting, they discuss whether the colony of Virginia should bear its own charge and no longer be burdensome to the crown. So that's an interesting observation. The Committee of Foreign Plantations saying that the colony of Virginia financially appears to be burdensome to the Crown. Lord Baltimore also requested to speak with the committee regarding a secret tobacco trade between the planters and the Dutch. The English government would officially draft formal instructions for William Berkeley, but we will not be able to get to those today. In fact, we will get to those next week. Next time, we will have exhibits back. I apologize in advance. The last 2 weeks, we lost our primary source exhibits, with the exception of the one today. Next week, they'll be back. We'll talk about the instructions of Sir William Berkeley, and we'll do that next time on Historical Context.